this is a really exciting day for me and a really exciting video to make because it's something that I thought I would never do. I'm now today going to trial no-dig potatoes for the very first time. I've always used the traditional method of digging the potatoes, digging the ground, putting the potatoes in, trenching them up, and I've always been successful using that method. If you look at previous videos, you can see lots of examples of the types of harvests I've had, so I'm absolutely certain that that way works. But everybody keeps telling me, have a go at no dig, it's so much simpler, and that's what I'm going to do today. I've allocated a bit of an area behind me and I'm going to trial no dig and show you the process that I use as I go through the various steps, and later in the year we'll see how well I get on. So keep watching this video and I'll show you how I've done it. Now this is the area I plan to use here, which is right next to my rhubarb and raspberries, and just to the left of it is the area that I didn't plant anything last year because it was used for the materials and the build for the new polyhouse, which you can see just over here. And you can see there's a bit of surface weeds, a little bit of moss on there, and all I'm going to do first is put a thin layer of newspaper down just to help to suppress the weeds, give it a good watering, and then put a thin layer of my own compost on top, and then put the potatoes directly on top of that. And then what I'm also going to do, over the last couple of weeks I've been collecting some grass clippings which are in these green bags here, and they're going to be used as the mulch on top of the potatoes. So that's the plan, so let's get into it. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to layer this area with some newspaper just to help to suppress the weeds. Some of the videos I've watched using this technique have not used newspaper, they've just put them straight on top. But because there is a bit of weeds here, I'm just hoping it's going to suppress the weeds a little bit. It's only a thin layer of newspaper, so I'm just going to put that on just right at the very bottom. Just put that on at the bottom. Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to give it a bit of a soaking just to completely wet the newspaper and allow it to soak through. Might make it a little bit wider. Okay, so now that I've got the newspaper down, I'm just going to give it a bit of a soaking. As you can see now, this area here is completely covered in newspaper. Now next, I'm going to put a layer, a very thin layer of my own homemade compost, which I'm really pleased with. It's the first time I've been able to use my own compost in this way. And if I'm really honest, this is the main reason why I've been reluctant to use no dig. I've always felt that the no dig method would need an awful lot of compost. And if you go and buy it to the volumes that you want, it can be very expensive. So over the last 18 months, 2 years, I've been making my own compost, and now I have a little bit spare, which is why I think it's a good idea to give it a go. So I'm just going to put a very thin layer just on top of the newspaper, probably about 2 or 3 inches worth of compost, just to cover it. So here you can now see the area that's got the newspaper on, which I've saturated, my own homemade compost about 2 to 3 inches. I'm now going to give this a bit of a water, give it a bit of a soaking before I get the potatoes ready. It's just to make sure that there's plenty of moisture in the ground before we start putting the potatoes on. I have seen videos of people using this technique where they don't use newspaper, they just put the potatoes directly onto the ground, and that's fine because the idea is that once you've put your mulch on top, or you've covered your potatoes, they will suppress the weeds anyway. Obviously they'll deny them light and oxygen, and the weeds you shouldn't really have a major problem with the weeds. And because I know that this area of my allotment is one of the most prolific areas for weeds, I'm just doing a bit of a belt and braces job. And remember, for me, this is a complete experiment anyway. So we'll see how we get on. So the next thing to do is put the potatoes on top. So now it's time for the potatoes, and I'll be using a variety of first earlies called Swift. Never grown them before. Now these have been chitting for about 2 to 3 weeks, and chitting is where you give them a little bit of time to develop their shoots. There's a lot of mixed opinions on whether chitting is absolutely necessary, but in my experience potatoes grow exactly the same whether you chit them or not. I bought these 2-3 weeks ago and just left them, so they're chitted anyway. So what we'll do is take the potatoes, place them directly on top of the compost with the chit or the shoots upwards, and I'll place them round about 18 inches apart to give them a bit of space. Now once the potatoes are all ready, it's now time to cover them up or mulch them. Now I've seen people using this method using straw to cover the potatoes as the mulch. Now I haven't got access to straw, so what I've been doing over the last few weeks is collecting grass clippings. So all I'll do is put them over the top of the potatoes to cover them up. And what we want is quite a thick covering on the potatoes. So there you see the potatoes are now covered up with the grass clippings. Now these grass clippings are about a few weeks old, so they've already started to decompose, but there's no reason why you shouldn't use fresh grass clippings on top. So what I'm going to do over the next couple of months is start to build up the layer of mulch on top of these potatoes with further grass clippings. So when I cut the grass and get the grass clippings, I'll just bring them over and just layer them on top, and they'll just naturally decompose. I'll just give them a water, and then I'm just going to do the rest for the rest of the potatoes in the area next to it in exactly the same process. Now you saw how quick and easy that method was. It didn't take me very long at all, and I can see it having certain advantages definitely just in planting the potatoes. So firstly, you could use maybe weedy or unsightly areas in your vegetable garden, your allotment, that you didn't use before, just by covering them with this method. So that'll get rid of them. Also, this method avoids digging, and in the past that's something I've physically found quite challenging because potatoes often take up quite a large area and there's quite a lot of digging to do. That's completely avoided by this method. I can also foresee another couple of advantages when I'm harvesting the potatoes. Firstly, when you're harvesting with a fork, when they're in the ground, you often pierce a few of the potatoes because it's unavoidable, because you can't see them because they're in the ground. With this method, from what I've seen, you literally just pull up the plants and the potatoes will appear, and you just fumble around in the mulch to find the potatoes. And secondly, I also think that the potatoes will be cleaner. If you're harvesting your potatoes when it's been raining or the ground is wet, then the potatoes are often quite dirty. This method, from what I've seen, when they're harvested, they're quite clean. Now for the final part of the video, I've had to come inside because it started raining. So there is another advantage I can foresee in using this method, and that is the grass mulch that's put on top will eventually start to decompose, and that can either be composted down, and therefore that can be used for future crops for compost, so that won't go to waste either. So I'm now going to go and plant the rest of the potatoes in exactly the same way that I've shown, but I am really excited to see how they get on. There's nothing to suggest that they won't grow really well, but because I've tried this for the first time, it really is an experiment. As I've said, the one thing I believe that stopped me from doing no dig in the past is the amount of compost I believed I needed, and because I started creating my own, it now gives me the opportunity to at least try it. So definitely come back and watch later videos to see how they get on, and I do hope you enjoyed it. And if you've used this method before, then please let me know what you think and how you get on by putting a comment below. That'd be fantastic for others to share your experiences and let others know who want to try it for themselves. I do hope you've liked this video, and if you did, don't forget to give it the thumbs up, and if you want to subscribe to the channel for future videos on how to sow and grow fruit and veg and 1 or 2 recipe ideas, don't forget to press the subscribe button, and I'll see you all on the next video.